Or the other Courtney.
Let me when I'm sharing my screen.
There, you're in. You're good.
So it's recording. Okay. So see, having a co-host helps. So we're going to talk a little bit about the PLT resources. Hopefully all of you got the email with your access codes. And if you haven't had a chance to actually go through the process of accessing it, then, oh, I guess we're still, Evelyn's joining us now. If you haven't accessed it yet, we'll talk a little bit about that. There was a minor change that I made to the schedule that's on your syllabus, so I'll update you on that. We're going to talk about your STEM brief and give you a chance to kind of share a little bit about what you're working on for that, ask questions, and then I'm going to take a little poll. We're going to talk about technology in STEM, and you're actually going to start on a mini lesson using the Project Learning Tree resources. And so we're going to talk about that project. That's actually going to be due in a couple weeks. And we're going to do the jigsaw. So hopefully you got a chance to read your article that you were assigned. And we're going to jigsaw with that. And then we're going to finish up by just touching on your next assignment coming up week 3, which is the STEM experiences reflection. So lots to cover. So any questions, comments, things that we might be interested in knowing before we get started? Nacho?
Might not be that available. My wife is just getting back. She had to go get tested for COVID, and so we're doing this weird isolation thing, and it happens to be potty training for my 3-year-old. So,
you might be in and out today. Oh gosh,
yeah.
I hope the results come back okay. Has she been...
So we really do think it's strep throat. So and luckily the strep throat test will be done before the COVID. So if strep comes back positive, it's strep. I mean, I guess it's possible to have 2 things, but we don't know anyone that's had COVID or have no reason to believe that it is COVID. So
well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. I actually have a granddaughter who's doing the same exact thing right now, getting tested for strep and COVID. We think it might be strep, but we're hopeful that that's what it is. So yeah, as far as we know, she hasn't been exposed, but yeah, so let us know what you find out. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you. Any other comments before we get started? Okay, so is there anybody who has not gotten the email to that includes your access code for the Project Learning Tree resources? Raise your hand if you did not get it. Okay, good. Is there anybody who has not yet accessed it? Yay, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for doing that and walking through the process. I know it was a little challenging to follow all those steps. So is there anybody who had trouble or still doesn't think they have the right setup for it? I love graduate students, so independent. So good, so we won't have to spend any time working on that, which will be good because we'll be looking at those resources starting today. The one thing that I will share with you for the schedule, it is a very minor update. Can everybody see the schedule now? So you'll notice that I had changed the date on this tech presentation to July 14th. So you'll do the tech presentation during our Zoom meeting. And we're actually going to talk about that today. That's connected to the Project Learning Tree resources. So it previously had said July 19th. Any questions about that? Okay, so I'm going to show you the Moodle site, and I'll just show you, I have put the schedule up kind of separate from the syllabus. Oh, no, I haven't. I will put the schedule up right here under the syllabus so that when I make updates, you'll just be able to go to that link and find the updates. You won't have to constantly be updating your schedule. So I'll do that today. Make sure I get that put up schedule. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the STEM brief. So that's your first kind of bigger assignment, and hopefully I got a couple emails about from people who wanted to do kind of an outside topic or modify a topic, and so I've responded to that, and I'm good with those. Hopefully you have picked your topic and you've looked at that assignment and kind of at least gotten a good idea of what you're going to be doing. Because it is due Sunday, the 5th, and this one's going to take you a little time to collect the research on. So first I'm going to ask, are there any questions about this project in terms of completing it? Looks like I don't have any questions, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm actually going to just assign you to a breakout room for a few minutes, and I'm going to give you a chance to chat with your classmates about what you're going to be doing for your STEM brief, kind of where you're thinking about looking for research, or where, if you've already done some research, where you found some good resources for your brief. And then if you've already started on it, you can talk about how you're completing it. So I will put you in groups of, how about we do, there, I was gonna say, okay, it wasn't gonna let me stop sharing. How about we do groups of 3, and then we'll have one group of 2. So any questions before I put you in groups about what you're going to be doing? And I'll pop in and just check in with you, and we'll probably only spend 5, maybe 10 minutes max on just talking about the project with each other. I think it's helpful sometimes for you to get a chance to discuss what you're thinking and what you're doing and get ideas. So, all right. So Leah, did you get a little message that says move to breakout room? Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Are you wanting me to move to break?
No, it just automatically assigned you. I should have clicked you off.
It's okay.
So you should be able to see at the bottom of the screen where it has all the options, that
Yeah,
breakout
that's
room.
new. Okay, that's new from last week.
Yes, it is. So if you click on that, could you see what I was doing as the co-host?
Let me try. I was trying to grade an assignment. If I click on it, it says you've been assigned to a breakout room. So I'm afraid to click anything else because I don't want to.
Okay, let me see if I
figure and so when you do it, do you just say like groups of 2?
Yes, and that will randomly assign them, but you can also manually assign them. So if you want them to meet like with the particular group, you can also assign who they meet with.
Oh, I don't care.
So at this point, yeah, I don't care how they, so then you can actually go in. So you can't right now because I assigned you to a room, and it won't let me now unassign you, I don't think. Let me see if I can do it up here.
Do we want to be recording right now? Because I can pause it.
Pause it, yeah. Welcome back, everyone. Sometimes that can be a little awkward as it just rips you out of your conversation. You're done whether you want to be or not. But so welcome back, and I got to pop in with everybody. It sounded like good discussions were happening. I feel like you all have a good start on this project. Any questions that came up as you were discussing this about how to complete it or how to find resources or anything?
We had one question just on trying to keep it kind of condensed. I know it said that it was 2-page minimum, but we were just worried about trying to summarize, I guess, 6 articles into not necessarily summarize 6 articles, but have 6 articles be relevant and reference them in such a small assignment.
Yeah, so what I want you to think about when you're doing this is you're not necessarily going to be quoting any of these sources. You're just going to be sources.
We didn't hear that, or at least I didn't.
Am I breaking up?
You completely broke up, right?
Right when you were explaining everything.
Technology. I turned off my Wi-Fi. So I actually upgraded to faster Wi-Fi last week, hoping that would help, but you know. Is that better? Can you hear me okay now? Okay. So what I want you to focus on is not necessarily specifically referencing every source, quoting that, but to synthesize it and just cite your sources as a group of resources. So you don't necessarily have to focus on putting in specific quotes from every resources. So that is harder to do. And so if you go over the 2 pages, I'm not gonna like stop reading after 2 pages. I just, and really focus on like choose like 3 or 4 sections to address and just focus your comments on that. So I don't expect you to summarize everything each source says either. So be choosy, pick what you want from each source. Good question. Any other questions that came up? So there is a rubric. Make sure you take a look at the rubric for how it will be evaluated and kind of follow that. And then the other thing is, and this is where I generally see students lose points, is to remember that this is like a newsletter brief, not like a paper. So break up your sections. So you might have a quote, a single quote, or a picture, or you might have a sidebar or columns or something like that. It's not necessarily written as a paper. And so make sure you, if you're unsure about that, to look at the examples that were provided. Isaiah, you have a question?
How about spacing? Is it double spaced, single spaced, etc.?
So I don't think I indicated that on the rubric. I don't have a preference. Whatever works in terms of formatting for you is fine with me. Okay, with no further questions, we'll go ahead and move on. I'm gonna do a little poll here, and this is kind of a pre-assessment about your experience with lesson planning. So you will see a poll pop up, and it's just a quick multiple choice one. I just want to get a read for how much experience you have had writing lesson plans. So you could indulge me and respond to that real quick.
Is that writing lesson plans for WU or undergrad lesson plans?
So either. Good clarification, Evelyn, because it can look very different, right?
Well, that's how I was saying, because like my undergrad lesson plans are written totally different than what WU's lesson plans are.
I know you guys have all had raise your hand if I am making a wrong assumption, but I think all of you have had the assessment course. Is that correct? Yeah. So you have had some experience with the WU template lesson plan that you'll be using for your EdTPA. And we'll actually evolve over the course into using that more complicated, complex lesson plan, but we're going to kind of scaffold that first with some other, with a different format, and I'm going to have you do some practice so that you kind of build up to that more complex one. So that's why I wanted to know how much experience you had. So thank you. It looked like most of you have moderate to little to moderate. And so I feel like that was appropriate to maybe start out with a little less complicated template. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about technology in STEM, and it actually came up in one of the groups that I was visiting, and how technology sometimes is not used very effectively in elementary classrooms, although we sometimes assume kids have a lot of technology experience because they're on devices a lot, electronic devices. When it comes to actually using those devices for academic purposes, many of our students, K-12, don't really have the background to complete academic work. Like, they've done a lot of gaming, they know how to text, they know how to do social media, but when you ask them to do a project using even a word processor, they're often unsure how to even tackle that. So when we talk about STEM and using technology, we're going to use a much broader definition of technology than you may have experienced before. So in the world of science, technology refers to really anything that is created by man. And so whether it's a pencil or it's a tool that you're using to measure, like a ruler, or it's you know, the fan that you're using to generate wind power for the windmills, like all of those are considered technology. And so with that very broad definition, we're going to talk about how do we meaningfully incorporate technology. So it doesn't mean that they have to be on an electronic device. Doesn't mean that they have to be doing research on that device, which is probably 85% of the time is what, when I have students write lesson plans that incorporate technology, almost always they use Chromebooks or iPads to have students do research. And so we're going to try to think more critically about how we use technology with kids, and we're going to take one of the project learning tree lessons, and you get to choose what lesson. You can pick the grade level that's most interesting or appropriate for where you're going to be, and you're going to add some sort of technology into that lesson that's meaningful. So the other challenge with technology that I see is we often use it as a time gap filler. So if students finish their work early, then they get to go on the Chromebook and they get to do some sort of computer activity, or they get to do like a pre-programmed simulation or app that has maybe a little to do with the topic you're studying, but isn't really relevant. Or maybe they even get to go work on their math. Say again, Nacho?
I hate coolmathgames.com.
Yeah.
Say that right now.
Yeah.
One of my kids, specifically one of my kids with autism, that has it in his head that that's a math activity, that when he's done with other math, because he can do regular math very quickly, that he should get to do cool math games. Drives me nuts. I hate it. Sorry.
No, that's absolutely, you see Courtney's giving you a thumbs up that she agrees that,
Hate it.
so yes, so, you know, there's two pitfalls we fall into. One is just trying to find something that uses technology to try to make our lessons fun and that aren't necessarily relevant to what they're learning. And the other one is just to use it to fill time or to default to, well, go and look up some resources, and that's the way I use technology. So I'm going to challenge you to, in the next couple of weeks, to look at the PLT activities, choose one, and then think creatively about how you can use technology meaningfully to engage in that activity. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples, just ideas that I've used or I've seen in the past that were fairly simple and easy to implement. One of the things with science that kids don't do enough of, that really is important to science, is actually making observations and recording those observations. And so having students do that in different ways provides, you know, additional engagement, but also teaches them to learn to collect evidence of their observations. So it can be as simple as if you're doing a, let's say you're doing the schoolyard safari activity and have them outside looking at different things in the schoolyard and making observations. You could actually have them sketch things that they see. You can use Chromebooks, you can use iPads for that. You can actually have them take photographs of that, and then use, in addition to the photograph, they have to write down what they observed. So that's a very simple but relevant use of technology. The other thing that that goes well with that is then they can easily turn those into science notebooks and keep track of their observations in a notebook, an electronic notebook that can easily interface with Google Classroom. So that would be one example of how technology might be used in the PLT activities. One of my favorite activities out of the PLT book is Birds and Worms, and it's about camouflage and evolution. And so the students have to collect goldfish out of the grass. And obviously the different colors of goldfish, some are easier to find and some are harder. So you can see how camouflage might help an organism survive better. And so what I do with that to incorporate technology is I use graphing and data collection. So they have to actually collect data using Excel. And this is a 3rd grade class. Or Google Sheets, you can use Google Sheets as well. So they actually have to first collect it on paper, and then they have to put it into the computer using Google Sheets, and then they get to actually create a graph that shows for each color which one had the most casualties, right? The birds ate which one the most. So that's a relevant way for them to analyze and look at data. And it incorporates technology in a meaningful way. So those are just 2 examples, but there are thousands of ways to use some kind of technology. It may be something as simple as creating a Kahoot quiz that they actually get to complete as part of an assessment, where they're engaging in answering questions in that way. Or maybe you do, there's lots of different apps that you can, Plickers, Socrative. Those are things that you could use to encourage discussions or have them work in groups. And so even if you use like a collaborative Google Doc that they could contribute to collect and analyze data, something like that. So lots of different things to think about. It could be something totally not computer related. So you could have them out using tape measures and compasses to map out the area of some, depending on, like if you were doing, one of the activities is about trees and they have to figure out how tall the tree is using math. So you could use technology for that. That has to do with measurement. I see the little one in the back, Nacho. So this is what you're going to be working on. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So any questions about the definition of the technology or kind of thinking about that before I show you the lesson plan template?
Would using manipulatives in math be considered technology then?
Yes, yes, yep. As long as it is relevant to what you are doing for the project, that it's not, something in addition to.
Mhm.
Yeah. I thought I had the template up. Let's see. There we go. Okay, I'll get that up first before I share my screen. Any other questions? Okay, so for this activity, you're going to use this science lesson plan template. It's the 5E learning cycle. So you're going to take the project learning tree lesson. And so some of that information may be incorporated, like what's the NGSS or Common Core standards that might be connected to that activity. They may already have that information for you. They should have the learning targets for the activity. You'll have to add one in that relates to the technology that you add. So you're going to talk about setup, materials, the technology you're going to use, safety considerations, and then basically going through those 5 E's. How are you going to engage? How are you going to explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate the activity? And a lot of that will be already created for you in the project learning tree materials. You just have to kind of put it in the 5E format. And then the last part is just how are you going to close it? How are you going to assess it? Okay. So that's the template that you're going to be using. Any questions about the 5Es or the template? Each section has an explanation of the kinds of activities that you might include in that section. And you don't need to leave those in. Once you have filled it in, you can do the prompts that I have in there. So I'm anticipating that this shouldn't be more than 3 pages. So keep that in mind when you're doing the procedure section, that you're making this brief. And the goal of doing this is, one, is to really think intentionally about how you're going to use technology. And 2 is to get familiar with the 5E cycle of learning. And so I'm not going to evaluate this lesson plan on, how well your learning targets are written, whether you got the right standards. This is really a scaffolded practice up to. I will give you feedback, but I won't grade it based on that.
I have a question about the timeline part at the top.
Yep.
When it says like time to complete the lesson. Should we be looking at these lesson plans in terms of like a small, whatever their daily, 45 minutes or whatever is that's allotted to this? Are we thinking of what we're fitting in that amount of time, or are we thinking of it like as a unit of teaching?
So this one is just going to be one lesson. So the activities that you look at in Project Learning Tree will tell you how much time usually. And then they'll have extensions or things you can do prior to it. But I would try to just keep this one to a 1 lesson activity. So that usually is between 30 and 45 minutes for elementary.
Okay, so it would be one block that a kid has in a day or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And a lot of those activities are geared towards just a lesson. Like they have the main lesson, but they also, like I said, they have pre-lessons and they have after lessons that you can add to extend it or expand on it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to show you on Moodle. Well, actually, I'm going to share my screen using Moodle and show you where you're going to be using information from this activity and where to post it. So obviously, it's not one of our big projects. It is classroom activities. So this week, I'm going to give you some time to talk about this a little bit in your group. Again, I'll break you out and you'll be, those points for the collaborative work will be assigned based on your participation in class today. So that's some of the points. You have a discussion post that you'll be responding to this week. Your initial post has to be by July 3rd, which is Friday. And so you're going to just choose your activity that you want to modify. You're going to look at it, review thoroughly all the parts that are included in the project learning tree lesson. You're going to, in this forum, you're going to post the name of the activity, the standard that it addresses, and the learning target for the activity or targets. And at this point, you don't have to have your technology one completed, just what is already included in the project learning tree materials. You're going to actually comment on at least 2 sections that are included in the lesson plan. So what, in addition to kind of the outline for the lesson, what other things does project learning tree incorporate and add, and how is that helpful? And then the last question is, how are you thinking about incorporating technology into this activity? So you have to post your response by Friday at midnight, and then respond to one other person's post by Sunday at midnight. So for this week, that's all you have to do for this activity. Next week, the only activity that is listed is this one. So it's the discussion post. So here you'll describe, just in the discussion post, you'll just give a brief description of your mini lesson. And you'll actually share your lesson plan using our shared Google Drive. Okay, and so that's really, so by the end of next week, Sunday, the July 12th, you will have shared your lesson plan and you will have just described it in this forum. I added one question for you to think about. You don't have to incorporate this in the lesson plan, but I want you to start thinking about, well, now if you were going to add engineering into this lesson, how would you, if it's not already included, how would you add engineering? If it's already included, then you can say it's already included. But if you wanted to extend it and add some engineering, what would you do? So that's next week for the forum post. Share your lesson plan. All of you should have gotten an invite to the shared Google Drive. And if you pull that up, you'll notice there's a folder, PLT draft lesson plans. And if you click on that, it's empty. And that's where you will upload your lesson plan. And again, that's due by the 12th of July. You'll see some other stuff that's already in the shared folder. This is from last summer's class, and I intentionally left some things in there that you might want to see as examples when we move into these future projects, but none of these pertain at this point to the PLT activity. Okay, any questions about the the post for next week. You'll also see the final activity related to this is during week 4 in our next Zoom meeting, you'll give a brief, just a couple of minute presentation, like just you telling us about your lesson and how you incorporated technology. You might be able to, you can share a screen view of something you did if you want, but don't spend a lot of time creating a presentation. It's going to be 2 to 3 minutes and just give the highlights. Okay. That sound good? That sounds like a great, interesting, fun activity. I hope you're excited. I think this is a fun activity. It'll give you a chance to really explore Project Learning Tree too and see what they have to offer, and also start thinking about how technology can become something that you incorporate meaningfully in your elementary classroom. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left, and I'm gonna, real quick, I'm gonna put you in breakout rooms according to the articles that you read, and for the STEM discussion, or the STEM articles, and then I will swap you up, and then you'll get to talk about that with the other groups. And I'm trying to think about how, so I had you in 3 groups, and I don't think I wrote this down. So group 1 is going to be, I am trying to think where I had this information in week 1, I think. Oh, here we go. I found it. I had to figure out how to see who. So group 1 is going to be the one who, those of you that read the NGSS and STEM instruction. And I'm going to assign you real quick. So that would be Courtney, Nacho, and Leah. And then group 2 is going to be the group that read the buoying design skills. That's going to be Danielle and Isaiah and Morgan. And then group 3 is going to be Evelyn and Susie. And that's the STEM oversold. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give you just about 5 minutes to talk with your article groups about what you read, and then share out. Isaiah, question?
I think I misinterpreted the directions. I read the Path to Better Jobs article, not the.
Oh, okay. So I'll assign you to that.
So did I.
Okay, so so let's see. Who did you guys just choose which one you wanted, or did you see that somewhere?
I think that's what it said.
The articles were, the numbers on the articles are not in the order that they're listed. It's like the one listed as number 2 is at the bottom instead of the middle.
Bottom. Okay, so let me reassign this.
I noticed a possibility for confusion when I had to locate mine.
I think I got you in the right groups. I just didn't tell you the right name of the article. So I will just go ahead and send you to your breakout rooms, and you should be in the group with the people that read the same article. So I'll check in though to make sure. So I'll give you about 5 minutes just to discuss it, and then I'll bring you back, and then I'll rearrange you, and you'll discuss it again with the people who read a different article. So about 1.5 minutes each.
I'm gonna give them like 7 minutes after you guys are done.
Yeah, I'm running a little over, I think, sorry.
I'm not upset.
I actually,
I'm glad you gave them that poll.
yeah, so that was good to know. That's interesting. I don't see, why don't I see, oh, there we go. They should be popping back in any second. There we go. No, that probably was not enough time, but I appreciate you getting a chance to discuss your articles and hopefully just starting to learn a little more about the different perspectives in STEM, you know, kind of what's driven STEM, maybe what is STEM really as great as it's proposed to be, and also, you know, what is a STEM activity, really integrated STEM activity look like? So that was the 3 articles. So if you didn't get to read an article that sounded interesting, you know, go back and check it out. Is there any quick comments about the articles that you want to share with the group? I'm not going to ask you to share out because we are running short of time, but anything that struck you particularly or not? Okay. So the last thing I had was to go over the STEM experiences reflection, but we don't have time to do that. And so what I will do is I will do a short 5-minute-ish video that kind of details that project. And I will attach it to underneath that project so that you have a little more detail about how to complete it. But just real quick, it's a paper, but it's really a paper that's based on your experiences primarily. So you can bring in things that you've read, you can bring in things that you've seen in the classroom. You can talk about some of you have some pretty significant experience already with STEM. And so it's going to be about you presenting your views on STEM and your experiences. So not as much research and not necessary to cite research in that paper. So it's more of a reflection. And it's 3 pages minimum, double spaced. Okay, so any quick questions about that before I let Courtney take over?
Which one was that?
That's the STEM Experiences Project 2. So Evelyn, if you go, you find it at the very top.
Yeah, I found it.
Yeah, and so you'll be working on that next week.
Okay.
And since we don't have a Zoom meeting, I wanted to kind of give you a preview, but I'll do that via a video. And I'll try to get that up today. I'll also post the recording of this. Courtney's laughing because I'm still talking. I'll post the video recording of this class meeting too on Moodle. Okay, Courtney, it's all yours.
Okay, so you guys have been, you know, knee deep in this for a bit. So I'm gonna give you like a 10-minute break. And then we're gonna hop in, which means when we do reconvene, we're gonna move pretty quickly through some content. So it is 11:08 by my watch. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back. Okay, good. You're all coming. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for your contributions on the Padlet. I'm noticing something that I want to kind of dive into for a moment, and that is that out of the groups, if you guys look at your Padlet, you're going to notice that 3 of the groups used really teacher talk, and 1 group chose to use student-friendly language. So what is the benefit of having classroom norms in student-friendly language as opposed to teacher talk? And I purposely did not give you direction on what to choose. So there is no right or wrong. But let's kind of talk about that a little bit when we're thinking about creating a classroom culture to support investigation around mathematics and any other subject matter.
Well,
I think it's, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, I think using the non-teacher talk makes it more friendly for students because they might not always understand teacher talk.
Right. I don't always understand teacher talk. I'm kidding
Yeah.
a little bit, but yeah, breaking it down, okay, making it more usable. What else do you guys think about that?
I think they're more likely to buy into it when it's in their own words.
Morgan?
I think if they understand the goal, they're more driven into kind of understanding and kind of buying into the process, the practices.
And how does that translate then when you're thinking about lesson planning? Because we're going to talk about lesson planning. You already did a little bit with Carla, but how does that translate then to your work with students in lesson planning and instruction?
If you have those like core principles, like for instance, mathematicians do math together, you always have that, hey, we're going to come back, we're going to do group growth mindset. Hey, what did we learn today? So it's easy to go back and find those measurables.
Yeah. Does this connect to thinking about like learning targets in lessons? I taught behavior, so I can wait for a really long time. Yeah, Courtney.
For me, with like the learning targets, you're going to word them in ways that is like just one thing at each. You're not going to have complex sentences that have more than one thing. It's just going to be one thing. You check it off, and then the next thing, and then be bullet point list that they can easily check off. Yes, I've done this, and then they can only they're only thinking about one task at a time, and so then it's easier for them to comprehend.
Right.
And if we move it to this, one thing in each thing with student talk would make it easier for them to understand what's expected of them and what they should be doing.
Yeah, and so if you're thinking about your classroom norms or even writing your learning targets and you're thinking about the kind of classroom that you're creating and supporting for learning for students, you want to make sure that, I think it was Morgan that talked about buy-in, right? You want to have students bought into either what the expectations are, if you come up with those collectively as a class, or if you're thinking in a learning format about what the purpose is of the activity, of the lesson, of the unit, right, of the subject. Because I don't know about you, but I know for me as a learner and as a teacher and as a person working within this organization, I don't do very well if I don't see the purpose or why I am being asked to do what I'm being asked. And kids are the same way, right? So if we have really structure, or if we have learning targets and classroom norms that are written in student-friendly language, that can support that buy-in, okay? So it's already 11:43 and I planned a bunch of things and we're gonna run out of time, blame Carla. But what I want to do really quickly is I'm going to share my screen and talk about this week's assignment, about misconceptions, and then you're gonna go back into your breakout room to do some work together in a partnership around communicating the standards. So first, let me share my screen to talk about your assignment for the week. So if I can, I apologize. I'm usually pretty quick with technology, and this is like bugging me that I'm not as fast as I want to be. Okay, so when you are in Moodle, you're going to see the misconceptions lesson plan, and when you click on that, you're going to notice, did it click for you? Like you can see what I see right now? Yes? Okay. Yes? Okay. So you are going to review student work. So you're going to choose either third grade, fifth grade, kindergarten, and first. Choose one of those files. And that is going to have student work samples where they discuss their learning and what they were doing. And then I want you to design using a modified template right here, which I bet you is not going to show up. You're going to use, that Word document did not pop up, correct? Right? Okay. So you are going to use this modified lesson plan template to design a reteach around what you are noticing in the student work. So you're going to think about what misconceptions that you're seeing, and then you are going to rephrase the learning target. You are going to talk about how you're going to hook kids into that reteach, what your reteach is going to be, and then how you're going to assess to see where they are, if they've made strides towards correcting whatever misconceptions you find there. Now, this is a reteach lesson plan, right? So this is not going to be like a 45-minute lesson. At the most, when you think about structuring remedial work in an academic setting or an elementary specifically, usually that would be taking place during like centers or some other time when students are engaged in a bunch of different work. So your lesson from that hook to get them re-engaged with you to the assessment piece would probably only be 15 minutes, okay? So the goal of this and the why you're doing this is because in EdTPA, task 4, you have to talk about, you write a lesson plan around misconceptions. And so I want to give you some practice doing that work. Questions so far? It's pretty straightforward. I appreciated Carla's poll earlier because that kind of gave me some insight about where you guys are in your lesson planning. I'm going to try to be pretty detailed about what I'm seeing in your plans. So just if there's an area that you're kind of unclear about or you will not get penalized, but I will give you feedback. So if there's something that you're kind of concerned about, you can say that even, like, this is what I'm thinking. Think of it as like a working draft rather. I mean, your best work, I hesitate to say the word draft because sometimes people think draft means junk. That's not what I'm saying, but I don't want you to like stress out about perfection, right? This is a learning process. So that is your main assignment that you have this week, is that you are going to do that misconceptions lesson plan based on the student work samples that I've given you in that folder. You remember you only have to choose one. And then you also have your weekly summary. Thank you very much for your thoughtful reflections in the last week. I really appreciated the amount of time that you put into those. I've taught this course a couple of times, and I'm always curious to see what that looks like because you can kind of tell how engaged students are in the learning. And so I just want to say that if there is something that you engage in, whether it's like a video that you watch or some other part of the course throughout that week, or maybe a connection from another class, you can always write about that in your summary. You don't have to just talk about the textbook or the articles. So if there was something else that really stuck out to you in your learning, please feel free to talk about that as well. The last thing that you are going to do for about 10 minutes is you are going to work in the same partnership that you were in right now, earlier, and you are going to, hold on a second. You are going to work on an assignment with your partner about communicating the standards. And this is something that you would have done Hold on, I'm trying to pull it up for you. This is something that I would have had you work on in class this week if we were or when we were together. And so what you're going to do, I've put this in Moodle as well, but you've already done a lot of the work around talking about the standards. We talked about that last week in class. And so right now, what I want you to do is kind of synthesize that information. And with your partner, I want you to develop a document that communicates in parent-friendly language about what the Common Core state standards are, what Smarter Balance is, how that would impact their student. So this is only like one page, one-sided. It could look like a flyer. It could look like a letter that you write. Think about like starting that year with your back to school night or whatever that looks like in your district, and how you have students who are, or parents who are coming in and they want to know like what's going on in terms of mathematics in my student's classroom, and how is that going to look for my learner. And so in Moodle, you have a turn-in, because this is not due until Sunday, but I want to give you about 10 minutes to get started. You need to give a short history about the standards, how you plan to use standards to guide your instruction. You're only going to choose one grade level. And then you also need to talk about Smarter Balance and how that will impact your class, because you know that if you are a testing year, you lose academic instruction in the academic year because of Smarter Balance testing. It just happens. And if you are in K1 or 2, you know, that is very different. And so that's what I want you to work on for the last 10 minutes with your partnership. It's not due until Sunday, but I want you to kind of start talking to each other about it. So any questions about this last activity?
Does it need to just be one document for the pair?
One document for the pair, one document. No questions? Isaiah, I can't tell if you're like furrowed, like you're thinking, or.
I'm trying to get a Google Docs started here.
Oh, okay. Okay, so can Carla break you into groups since I'm not allowed to do that?
Yep, here they go.
Okay, thank you. Morgan, you're really fast. You're like always in. Quick.
Well, I'm always worried that I'm missing something if I don't.
Yeah.
I feel like that it gives us like a little reminder, like you're going to be kicked out in a minute. And so I just assume that everyone else leaves, and then I'm wrong.
So my grad program was 100% online, and like I always would get so stressed out about missing instruction, so I get it.
Yeah. That's a little FOMO. I get worried.
We also
You keep loading sideways.
here. I'm moving my head. Okay. Any questions about communicating the standards so far while you dove into it? No?
Danielle and I were wondering about the at least 2 websites. Are we finding our own websites, or are you providing websites for us?
You can find your own. And also, like, you can think about Achieve the Core, right? Like, you've already kind of dug around on there, so that's a website option. You also have like the Common Core State Standards website that you can utilize too. Like, those are 2 that you should have accessed at some point so far in our little mathematical adventure together. The last
Oregon Department of Education also has some good resources for parents as well.
Yeah, so you can use those as well. The last thing I want to do is talk about week 3, because you guys are going to miss my voice and you won't see Carla and I. So for week 3, what I want you to think about, and the purpose of the week is really thinking about incorporating cross-curricular connections. So what you're going to be thinking through and working on is incorporating literature-based lesson plan with mathematics. And so I have some read aloud resources for you. I have some choices and options for you. This is the bummer of not being in person, because I have a bunch of children's books that I would just have out for you to look at and use. And so your online activity here, it's a planning guide, and you're going to plan out what that lesson plan would look like. And then for the actual assignment, you're going to turn that into a lesson plan. And when you do that lesson plan, make sure that you include any of the assignments, or if you have a graphic organizer that you have students use or anything like that, make sure you have those items as well. So that is kind of week 3. I've tried to have that all set up for you. I'm officially 1 minute over your time. I will let you go as soon as I ask if you have any questions, or if there's anything you need from me and Carla before we let you free into your lives.
So this explain what standards will be when we were talking about it, we thought, does that mean like we go to the 5th grade math standards and say, here's what your kids are going to be learning based on those standards?
Yeah, you could either do that in a narrative format, or you could talk about the actual like standards. I wouldn't do the whole list of those, because that's a lot, as a parent who's not.
Yeah, as a parent, you look at those and go, well, that means nothing.
Great. Glad you gave me a lot of letters and numbers.
All right.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Carla, anything else?
Isaiah has a question, I think.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
It's not. I just wondered if I could share something that's somewhat off topic.
Yeah. Is it about a cat?
No, it's about Salem Kaiser. I know a lot of you have some connections or other to Salem Kaiser, and I've mentioned offhand that we have a lot of issues in terms of racial equity there. Tomorrow at noon, our school board is having their election as to which member will be the chairperson and which member will be the assistant chairperson of the school board. Our current chairperson is an active white supremacist. Our current associate chairperson is an associate of hers who has attended Proud Boy events and has liked transphobic tweets and so on. So all that to say, it would be very good if we could get them out of those positions. So I don't know what people's direct connections are, but if you have any connection to Salem Kaiser personally, or know people who do, emailing today would be a great thing to do. We have, and I can provide more, thorough information on request, but one member, Sharon Blassie, is the only one who is actively anti-racist, and the only one our superintendent supports in any way. So emails of support for Sharon Blassie. There is on Salem Kaiser School Board links to a place where you can add public commenting in regards to that.
Thank you for sharing that information.
There's also some really good, if you're interested in learning more about this, there's some really good information recently that came out with an interview with Christy Perry, the superintendent, who addresses some of these issues directly, and she could definitely use support in trying to fight back against some of that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Isaiah.
Thank you very much.
What do I do, Isaiah? Like, I just email the I'm on a transportation chain email with all the Salem Kaiser transportation people. Do I email them and say, hey, this lady's like, get her out? What do I do? I don't care about burning any bridges. I'm leaving my job in like 2.5 months.
Yeah, that's what I would, if you can do that, that would be great. I can send you links and resources in terms of who exactly and how is, there's some good summaries of what's going on in terms of particular board members.
Can you post to our Facebook page?
Yeah, I can
Yeah, that.
do that. I'm formatting something to post to my school's teams and to various active groups on Facebook. And I can post that in our group as well. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
And did you say that this person had liked like tweets and stuff? Like you might want to link some of that. So
Yeah, we have screenshots.
there's proof.
Yeah, we have screenshots. And a lot of this stuff came out right after our last board meeting where he admitted on Facebook the Proud Boy stuff and tried to defend it as ignorance and so on. Like, I didn't know better. Like, bro, you're on the school board. You have to know better. Anyways, so he's been silent on social media for a week because he's being demolished in that arena. But yeah, there's screenshots and things. So I'll put those up as well.